Hello, my name is Sabri Adel Sadi, and I am the Francophone Implementation Coordinator at the Center for Research and Education on Violence Against Women and Children at Western University. The Knowledge Presents series presents information on trauma and violence-informed research and practices developed by members of the trauma-informed community of practice as part of their work related to prevention and fight against family violence. I want to acknowledge our work is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Lenapewak, and Jonathan nations. These lands are connected with the London Township and Sombra Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, Wampum. We make this acknowledgement to counter the doctrine of discovery and recognize Indigenous land and sovereignty. We also recognize that many Black people were violently displaced in Canada through settler colonialism and slavery. We will continue to work collaboratively with communities to challenge colonialism, anti-Black racism, and further forms of oppression that remain pervasive in Canada and that result in disproportionate impacts of gender-based violence on oppressed communities. As a settler in this space, I am grateful for the many benefits and want to express my gratitude to Mother Earth for the resources we use and to pay tribute to all First Nations people, Métis and Inuit, who have lived on this land for at least 15,000 years. We are delighted to welcome the projects Art Contes, or Art and Storytelling, with two members of their team, Fernanda Camejo and Laurence Gauthier. Together, they share a deep commitment to community well-being and the use of art as a therapeutic tool. Both work within the PAYO Art and Storytelling program, where they accompany participants through creative workshops aimed at strengthening community ties, supporting integration, and promoting resilience. Fernanda Camejo from Uruguay has diverse experience in teaching, art therapy, and mental health coaching. Her career led her to work with young people, rehabilitation workers, and seniors before joining PAYO as coordinator. Passionate about art and theater, she creates spaces for artistic expression and celebration of cultural diversity. Laurence Gauthier has extensive experience working with various communities, both in Quebec and internationally. An engaged art therapist, she uses art and creativity to foster empowerment and healing, particularly through exploring issues of cultural identity and intergenerational memories. Her humanistic approach and cross-cultural expertise enrich the projects she leads with PAYO. Together, they bring complementary expertise, putting art at the heart of their therapeutic approach in order to support participants' personal and collective growth while celebrating cultures and promoting social inclusion. I will now turn it over to Laurence and Fernanda to share their experiences, and I will join you for the question and answer period. So go ahead, Fernanda and Laurence. Thank you, Sabri, for this great introduction. So I am Fernanda and Laurence. We're both delighted to be here and to present you our project today. So Sabri has introduced the topic, which is art and storytelling with families. This project wanted to propose workshops, have interactive art and storytelling events, as well as interactive activities in order to reinforce family ties and prevent family violence. The project was initiated during the pandemic, but in a neighborhood that was already stressed because it's overpopulated by immigrants, migrants, newcomers, and also by refugees. So it's a neighborhood that is experiencing stress, and the pandemic only added to that. So this project was launched in that context in order to respond to the family's needs. So we'll start by talking about the project. This is a research project. It's based on intervention, and the research aspect is led by Carmen Beauregard from the Art and Therapy Department at UQAT. With her research team, they've analyzed the data, the qualitative data for the research, and currently They're
des articles en lien avec
writing
le projet
articles
Art et Contes.
related to this project.
On ne va pas aujourd'hui s'attarder beaucoup. On
So
va
today we
juste
won't spend a lot of
partir
time
dans la
on that
recherche.
aspect of the
C'est
research.
vraiment, c'est vraiment le volet d'intervention qui nous
It's
concerne
really,
davantage.
we're really going to
Avant de
focus on the
parler
intervention
ouais,
aspect
avant de parler
today.
de l'intervention par l'art,
Before
j'aimerais
talking about the
brièvement parler de
intervention
la
aspect,
structure
I
des
want to
ateliers
talk
qu'on
about the
propose. Donc, les
structure of
ateliers
the
art
workshops
thérapeutique,
that we
on en
offered.
avait
They were
initié deux
therapeutic
ateliers en
workshops, a
famille,
series of 8
soit
workshops offered to
dans
families,
le contexte d'un groupe familial,
whether in
ou
a family
soit on
context
rencontrait d'une
or
seule famille à leur domicile.
with
Donc, c'était
one family at a
des
time at
rencontres
home.
d'1 à 2 heures.
So these lasted about
Donc,
1 or 2
comme
hours.
les
We
activités
had
d'expression artistique.
storytelling, we had
Et bien sûr, on
expressive
adopte
arts
toujours
and or
les ateliers
artistic
avec
expression.
ouverture et de
And we
fermeture
also
comme étant
had
vraiment des
opening and
moments de
closing
détente
rituals,
chaleureux
which
et
enabled
sécuritaires
us to stay
vis-à-vis
safe and
maintenant,
welcoming.
le volet intervention, ce que je voulais mentionner,
For
c'est
what I
qu'aujourd'hui,
wanted
on
to
est là
mention
pour
when it comes to
partager notre
intervention is that we're
expérience,
here to share our experience
parler un peu de notre approche
and to talk
interculturelle
about our
et aussi de la
intercultural approach.
richesse
We also want to
de
talk about the
l'expertise que l'on a
richness
eue,
of the
des
team's
art-thérapeutes, des
expertise. We
musicothérapeutes, des
had therapeutic
dramathérapeutes et des
arts
psychothérapeutes au sein de l'équipe de
therapists,
travail de
we
recherche
had music
qui est venu
therapists,
vraiment
and
enrichir
others. And this
notre
really
intervention, notre
enriched our
documentation. Et
intervention
c'est
as
ce
well
qui
as
a
what we
mené
were
également à
offering.
la
And this
rédaction
also
d'un
led to
guide d'intervention en
the
lien avec la famille
creation of an
qui sera
intervention guide
disponible
for art and storytelling
sur
in
le site
families that will
de
soon be
l'Art et Contes,
available and will be available on the Knowledge Hub
accessible.
site,
Alors,
so you have
on
access
va
to it.
poursuivre peut-être avec les impacts.
So let's
Marie,
talk
tu
about the
vas
impacts,
introduire
shall we?
voilà, slide. Voilà. Donc, l'impact majeur de ce projet a
So
été le
the major
renforcement de
impact
la
of this
relation
project
familiale,
was
donc
the
les activités
enabling of
créatives
family
permettant de parler aux
relationships.
enfants,
The
aux jeunes
creative
et aux
activities
parents,
enabled
de
parents
renforcer nos
and children to
capacités
better understand
relationnelles,
each other. They
nourrir comme
strengthened their
nos
communication
identités que
skills
nous
with one another.
d'une
A lot
diminution
of
du
families
stress
told us that they
familial,
felt that
un meilleur
stress had been
sentiment
reduced within the
de
family.
connexion
There was a better
et
connection,
d'atmosphère
and
harmonieuse grâce à
overall, the
l'expression
atmosphere
artistique.
was
Ça a
more
aussi
welcoming through
amélioré
this artistic
la
expression.
résilience des
It
familles
also
parce que ça a
enabled
offert
families'
des outils
resilience
concrets pour mieux gérer
because
les
it offered
difficultés
concrete tools
au
to
quotidien.
manage
On a
daily
exploré
difficulties.
différents
We
contes qui avaient
explored
à voir avec
various stories that
la
were
réalité de ces
related
familles
to
pour les
the
aider
family's realities
à trouver une
so that we could
solution.
help the family
Parce
find a
que
solution
notre projet se base
because our project is based
sur ce qu'on peut trouver de positif et
on
des
the
outils
positive
en
that we can
solution
find as well as tools
sur le
to reach
problème en soi.
solutions. And we
Donc,
focus on
la
that more than we
recherche
focus on the
qui
problem.
trouve comme
So,
à
for
partir de nos
example,
histoires, parce que aussi on représente la
we
communauté
try and find
d'accueil
things in our stories because we
d'une
also
façon de
are the
s'intégrer
welcoming
et
community. So we're
de se
trying to help
sentir
newcomers
plus accueillis
integrate within
bientôt.
the community,
Donc,
feel
on était un
welcome.
peu ambassadrice de
So we
la
were more or
communauté
less
d'accueil
ambassadors
et en
of the
plus, on
welcoming
apportait comme une
community.
façon de
And we
voir, une nouvelle façon de
brought them
pouvoir
a different
communiquer en famille,
perspective and a
très
different way of
important
seeing each other within the
parce que
family. And that's really important
on permet aux familles de se
because we're enabling
d'exprimer et de
families
s'entendre d'une
to
façon différente
see
et de
themselves and hear
redécouvrir
themselves in a different way,
de
to
découvrir de nouvelles façons
rediscover
de se
new
communiquer.
ways of
Donc,
communicating.
ça a été vraiment un des piliers de notre
So really,
projet.
that was one of the project's pillars.
D'ailleurs, on peut vous raconter
In fact,
un exemple
we can give you an
d'une
example.
famille qui,
It's a family.
quand on a été voir, quand on a été chez eux faire
We went to their
l'intervention,
house for the
la maman,
intervention,
elle
and
vivait une maladie
the mother
santé
was
chronique,
ill.
une
She has
santé
chronic
chronique. Et la
illnesses.
présence
She
de notre
wasn't feeling
intervenante
well,
chez elle,
and
elle nous a dit par après, parce
she's told
qu'on
us
s'est rencontrés par
afterwards that
après,
having the worker
après avoir
there,
fini
and
le
this is
processus de
after we
clinique. Et
had
elle a dit
completed the
que ça lui
process with the
apportait
family,
une
she
plus
said
grande
that this
apaisement,
enabled her
ça
to
apporte une joie plus
experience her
épanouie, une
illness in a better
satisfaction,
way, happier way,
oublier
to
sa
get through
douleur
the illness, to
et
forget her
améliorer son quotidien.
pain, and to
Donc,
manage her
à
daily
partir de
living.
ce moment-là, elle a
So
continué à
from that
travailler avec
moment,
nous, à
she continued
participer à
working
nos
with us,
soirées à
participating in
partir
all of her projects.
du moment où on l'a rencontrée en famille.
After we
Donc,
met her within
ça a
her
été
family.
comme un témoignage qui a été
So
fort en
this
famille.
was really
Donc, on a pu
something
voir
important for us, a testimony that was important
l'impact
for
que
us.
ça
It
fait
enabled
pour
us to
certaines
see what
familles.
impact we can have on some of the
Ça nous
families.
a mené aussi
And did you want to say something? Yes, I was going to say that with regards to this example, what happens is that when we use art as a form of expression, in the case of this mother, we weren't focusing on what difficulties she was experiencing or what the family's experiencing. We're really putting the emphasis on the beautiful parts of the family so they can express their joy of sharing and being as a family. And so families that have faced issues and difficulties, it helps to calm them down and to regain hope. Yes. And basically, they find a new way of experiencing their difficulties and not focusing on them. So it's a learning. So we had a few difficulties nonetheless, and that brought us to reflect on um, the cultural humility. And that became one of the pillars of the project. So we wanted to focus our approach on the family's wellness, and they were really at the heart of the experience. We heard their needs, their stories, and we also respected their diversity. But we had to face our limits and admit them. Because what we noticed, well, I'll give you an example actually. We were working with a family group from the South. And, we had some expectations. We had planned our workshops and we thought that things should be done in a certain way, that mothers would behave a certain way. So the whole workshop was really well planned. And when we got to the reality of the group, we noticed that the mothers weren't behaving as we thought they would.
Il y avait vraiment un laisser-aller, les enfants.
So really, the kids weren't overly watched. They had a lot of freedom to do what they wanted. So we thought, okay, well, these are good moms. Why aren't they behaving according to our expectations? And that's where we noticed that we had cultural biases. We thought the moms would behave in a certain way, and that wasn't the case. And that really brought us to think about this and listen to the families. We also asked for help from one of our colleagues who comes from that community. And she explained to us that in a group context, it's not necessarily the mom that will take care of her own child. It's basically, it's a group care for the children. As we've said, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, we really see that, feel that in several cultures. But in our society, it's not as present. The village isn't as present. But in a group context, we could really see that it was everyone that became the kids' safety net. So this shed some light to our approach, and we understood the realities. We adapted better because we didn't want the intervention to be imposed. We really wanted our interventions to be organic, dynamic, that we could co-create everything together. Because the workshop's dynamic is co-creation. We propose stories, but we're also listening. So that constant work of interrogating ourselves really enriched our workshops and also our perspective as interveners or workers or facilitators. So I also want to say that what really helped us was team meetings where we were able to speak openly about our cultural shocks and deepen them, understand them, and find the proper strategies that would work with the families. And we're not there as experts, but we're really there to place value on the family's strengths and knowledge. Let's also say that we started by ourselves because we come from a different culture. We've studied in two different cultures, both of us, and we had different approaches. So by planning the workshops, we had to first address this issue between the two of us. We had to be flexible, and we had to accept the diversity. But it really needs active listening. We need to learn to listen and to adapt our practices. This is a continuous, ongoing process and very, very enriching. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so here I want to talk about the challenges as well as the successes. So yes, there were some confrontations or events that were confrontational, but this enabled us to examine our linguistic and cultural challenges and our biases and get to mutual understanding and proper communication. And of course, nonverbal and artistic expression is used. So in some groups, in some contexts, family contexts, we were able to focus on the nonverbal expressions and artistic expressions. For example, in the storytelling, we used fewer narrations, but more gests and nonverbal. We were also fortunate to have a trilingual team, so we were able to intervene in English, in French, and in Spanish. We got help from the translator for other languages, Urdu, Hindi, Punjabi. So that was super helpful for some of our activities. Another challenge was understanding methodological tools because, I haven't talked about it, but before we organized the workshops, there were the pre and the post tests. The research questions and the scale used to measure weren't necessarily culturally adapted for some families. It was really hard to understand and to connect with their reality. So we decided as workers that families wouldn't have to answer every question, but we were putting the emphasis on emphasizing on the qualitative data that were emerging during our events. Yes, that was a good learning, actually. Sometimes the questions that we were asking or the answers that we were proposing as choices weren't appropriate for their culture, so they didn't understand what they meant. And that was a beautiful learning on our side. There was also a challenge when it came to group management. For example, in families where it was a bit of a free-for-all for the children. For example, some children started climbing on tables. Then there was a safety issue. And we thought, okay, we need to find solutions. And these have to be creative. For example, we remove the tables, we put rugs on the floor, and we create on the floor. Moms and children totally changed their attitude. And it's not just the layout within the space that enabled to positively change the intervention, but also the materials used. Sensorial materials such as wool, wood, natural materials. We could see what was more artisanal had a better cultural resonance with the families that we worked with. Yeah, they had lesser stress than using crayons or pencils. Yes, right, because a marker and a page, I mean, we could see that families were in the performance. They were wondering, what do I draw? What are they expecting from me? But when we came to the sensorial arts, it was totally different. And then there was participation challenges. Well, this is what we did. We maintained consistency of communications by email, by phone, to make sure that families would come back. And the biggest reason why families came back to the weekly workshops was the feeling of belonging that was being created amongst the families. And here we're talking about the family groups more than the interventions held in the home. So basically, we found that flexibility was really key, adapting to families and being able to better understand their realities, the issues they face. And this also enriched our work as workers, facilitators. We talk about families, but same thing at home. The facilitator needed to adapt to the family's home, to the realities of the home, at the language level, at the spatial level. really, flexibility was key. If there was one word that we could choose, it would be that, flexibility.
Donc, je pense que pour les défis, là,
So for
ça
the
résume
challenge,
bien.
I think that summarizes well the challenges we faced and how we got through them. Okay, let's talk about community impacts and
Voilà,
future prospects.
donc, vraiment, ce projet nous a
So
permis
this
de tisser un
project
réseau social
enabled
et
us to build a
d'isolement.
social network to break
En allant chez les
isolation
familles,
because by
faisant
going
des
to family
familles,
homes
leur
and
permet de se
leading
rencontrer.
family group workshops,
Il y a
we were able
plein
to
de petites
meet
histoires, comme
all sorts of
son
people.
enfant
There's lots of little stories. For
est plus
example,
petit que le mien,
your
je
child
peux
is smaller
t'envoyer
than
une
mine. I
cadeau
have some
pendant
clothes
que
to give
vous
you, or
êtes
let's have an
entraide. Ça a
exchange.
été
There was
assez
help
bien.
being
C'est
given
comme
all
vraiment
in
comment
all
tisser les
directions.
liens
So it was
entre les familles.
really cool to
Et
see
ça a
how
fait
these
cette
connections were built among
appartenance
families
qui
and how there was a
a été très
feeling of
importante.
belonging within the
En même temps
community,
que
in the neighborhood. And that's
nous, on
really
développe
important.
aussi le
So
sentiment, c'est
as
devenu que
we're
c'est devenu comme un
developing
réseau vraiment
that
de
feeling, it
sécurité.
really became
Et,
a
et
tight
aussi,
network.
Art Contes, oui.
Excuse-moi, avant,
Oh,
excuse-moi
sorry.
d'interrompre, Fernanda, mais j'aimerais ça ajouter parce que
I
c'est
have
vrai que
something
notre
to add.
groupe famille, parce que Fernanda
You
et
know,
moi, on a
we're
beaucoup
talking about
collaboré
the
avec la
family group
famille.
quite a bit
Dans le
because we
contexte
did a lot of
de
interventions in that way. But when it
intervention
comes
communiquée,
to
ce qui était
home
merveilleux,
interventions,
c'est que les parents étaient
what was
valorisés
great
vraiment
is
par leurs
that
compétences
we placed
parentales. On
value
mettait
on the
l'accent
parents,
vraiment sur
on
leurs
their
forces,
skills
qui
as parents. We
étaient
really
leur
focused
contribution
on the
unique
strengths, on the
qu'ils offraient à
unique
leurs enfants.
contribution they were offering to
Puis,
their children,
c'est ça, toutes les belles forces qui étaient
all the
démontrées
great
à la maison.
strengths that were
Et
shown at
ça,
home.
le fait
And,
d'être vu, hein, on disait qu'on
you know,
représentait la communauté
being
d'accueil.
seen, we
Donc,
said that we were the
le fait
welcoming
d'être vu
committee.
par des intervenantes d'une communauté d'accueil, d'être reconnu,
You know,
c'était
we were
un grand
recognized
baume, autant pour
as
les parents que
that.
les enfants.
So it was
C'est très
pretty
important
good
ce que
for
tu dis,
children
Marlène,
and
parce
for
que
their
c'est vrai,
parents.
on n'avait pas, on mentionne pas assez. L'enfant,
You
il
know,
voit, il vit une autre culture à l'extérieur,
the
et
child
puis il vit une autre
experiences his
culture à la
culture from
maison.
the outside and then his
Et des
culture
fois,
inside the
l'enfant
home.
va
And
sentir
sometimes the
comme
child
certaines
can have
gênes par rapport à leur
can feel
culture.
embarrassed
On
with
essayait
regards to their
vraiment
culture.
de
And so we really try to
valider,
validate,
leur donner vraiment, comme tu dis, valoriser les qualités de
to
parentale,
place
la façon
value
de
on
faire de chaque parent pour
parental qualities, how they are with their
une
children.
unification chez
And
l'enfant.
basically,
Lui, il va sentir
this
l'enfant
enabled the
sur sa
child
culture à
to
l'intérieur et
be at
la
peace
culture
with
à
his inner
l'extérieur de sa
culture
maison,
and the
et
culture that was
que
outside his home, to know
qu'il
that
peut
everything is
vivre des
okay
choses
and that he
de
can
l'autre façon
experience
en
both
plus.
in both
Et ça,
ways.
c'est magique pour
Oui.
un enfant.
And that's
Et,
magical for the
et
child.
aussi, à Raconte,
And also, art and
Raconte aussi,
storytelling,
qui n'est pas Raconte en famille, on va aux écoles du
you know,
quartier,
we're
donc
also going to
on
the
connaît les
neighborhood schools. So
enfants,
we know the
on connaît les
children,
enseignantes,
we know the
on connaît
teachers,
les éducatrices, on va aussi
we know the
Donc,
educators.
on fait partie d'un réseau, on
So we're
continue
part of
cette
a
histoire dans
network. We're
d'autres milieux, dans
continuing
d'autres
to bring the
dans
storytelling
des
to
écoles,
other environments like schools
et
and
aussi,
others.
oui, c'est ça, tu peux parler peut-être.
Oui.
Oui.
J'avais le centre de pédiatrie sociale depuis
So,
Ohio, a ouvert ses portes tout récemment.
the
Et
Center
ça
for Social
comble vraiment un moment très
Pediatric
fort. Alors que
Services
le projet
opened at
Famille est
Peyo not
devenu
long ago. And that's interesting
des
because our
interventions.
project
Donc,
is coming to a close, but
les enfants
we'll be
rencontrent
continuing the interventions. For example, we're seeing children in the
s'il y a des enfants
classrooms.
qui vivent des
We're
situations
able to
très
see if
difficiles,
some children are
s'il y a des
vulnerable,
enfants
if
qui ont des difficultés au niveau
some
de
children
leur
are
fonctionnement
having
quotidien.
trouble when it comes
Il y a
to
des
daily
référencements
functioning.
qui peuvent se faire au centre de
We
pédiatrie
can
sociale de
do
l'Ohio
some
de la part des
referrals
professionnels
to the
scolaires,
center,
également
Peyo Center,
de notre part comme
from the
étant
school, but also
également
from
des
us,
intervenantes communautaires
since we are
carrières. Donc, on
community
peut vraiment
workers.
permettre à ces enfants-là qui
So
ont
we
des
can
besoins
really
plus
get these
importants
children with higher
de pouvoir
needs
avoir du
the
suivi.
opportunity
Donc, on
to
fait art-thérapie à la
get
demande des
follow-ups, to
familles,
be accompanied. There's
entre
art
autres,
therapy, among
pour ce
others.
centre de pédiatrie sociale,
That's one
en
of the
plus
services
bien sûr
offered at the Peyo
les
Center.
médecins et le travail social qui sont là pour
And
nous
there's
aider à
also
accompagner
doctors
dans
and
ces
social
défis.
workers who are there to support families as they face
On continue
challenges.
également d'être
We
réactifs au
also
niveau de
continue being
collaboration avec
active
d'autres
when it comes to
organismes en
collaborating with other
partenariat.
organizations and
Quand,
establishing
par exemple, dans
partnerships.
le cadre d'un projet
For
spécial,
example,
qui est le
during a
projet
special project, we had an
intergénérationnel
intergenerational
des familles.
project with
Donc,
elders and
on
families.
continue à créer
So
des
we
liens
continue
entre les différentes
creating connections
communautés dans le
between
quartier.
various
Et
communities
c'est
within the
vraiment
neighborhood,
en
and
s'associant également avec d'autres organismes que
we associate with
c'est
other
possible
organizations,
de faire
and
ça.
that helps us to
Donc,
do everything we
on est
do.
déjà rendu à la conclusion.
Okay, we're already at
Ce projet
the
offert aux
And okay, so this project has offered immigrant and refugee families a space for creation. I'm reading because this really shows what our project is: communication, connection to themselves and to others. By using art and storytelling as tools of expression, we're encouraging the integration of different life experiences and parts of the self. And really, it's a privilege for us. It's an honor. It's a joy. I could never be thankful enough to have experienced this and have been a part of this transformative power of art to strengthen families, to help to help us, and to help families and communities. You know, to be part of a project such as this one is such an opportunity for us. Yes, we had really rich learnings. All right, so we're at the question and answer period. We are more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you, Laurence and Fernanda, for your presentation. You really took the time to explain the inner workings of the project, the challenges you face, the impacts for families and for facilitators and for the community. So thank you so much. We have a lot of questions that were asked by our audience. So we'll start with this first question.
Est-ce que vous avez eu à intervenir dans des
So have you had
Parce
to
que
intervene in
les enfants
situations where the
dans
children's
d'autres cultures,
education in other
elles n'étaient pas
culture
conformes au droit,
wasn't
aux
conform
valeurs,
to
aux
the
du Canada?
rights, the
Si ça devait arriver,
values, the
est-ce que vous
laws
avez
of Canada? And if it did happen, how did you address this?
Répéter la question parce que ça a
Can you
ça a
repeat the
on a
question
entendu.
because our
La
screen
connexion
froze?
Internet est peut-être
Sorry, our
instable.
internet connection might be
Euh,
unstable. Okay, let me try
Avez-vous eu
again.
à intervenir
So,
dans des
were
situations
there any
où
situations where you had to
l'éducation des
intervene
enfants dans d'autres cultures
where
n'était pas conforme au
parenting in
droit,
other
aux
cultures
valeurs et à la culture
was
du
not
Canada?
aligned with Canadian law,
Et comment
values,
vous
and
avez
culture?
abordé
And how
cette
did you
question-là?
approach that?
Ou intervenir dans des moments où la culture.
So, intervene.
Est-ce que tu peux répéter?
Can you
Ça
repeat
l'a
again?
perdu.
Sorry, our connection is
Je pense que
bad.
c'est moi qui est en train de... OK. Alors, avez-vous eu à
So, have you
intervenir dans
had
des
any
situations où
situations where you had to
enfants
intervene where the
dans l'autre
parenting
culture
in the other
n'étaient pas
culture
conformes au droit,
was
aux
not
valeurs
aligned with
et à la
Canadian
culture du
law,
Canada?
values, and culture?
Mhm. C'est une bonne question. On a eu à
That's a good question.
réfléchir à savoir
We
si,
had to
si par
reflect
exemple on avait
to know, for example,
des doutes par rapport à une
if
possible
we had
présence
doubts
de
when it
violence au
came
sein de la
to
famille. On a eu à
knowing if
réfléchir
there
sur
was violence in the
comment on
family.
interviendrait, hein,
We had
parce
to
que
reflect on how
bien
we would
sûr,
intervene because, of course,
c'est des questions éthiques qu'on a,
these
qu'on
are
s'est
ethical
posées par rapport
questions that
à
we've
ces
asked
enjeux-là. On n'a
ourselves.
pas eu à faire, par exemple, de, de démarches au niveau de la
We
protection de la
haven't had
jeunesse. On n'a pas eu
to
ça du tout.
contact Child
Mais on s'est
Protection
posé des questions que
Services,
si
but
ça
we've
arrive, qu'est-ce
wondered
qu'on
if that
fait? On
was to
doit
happen, what would we
aborder ça en
do?
équipe. On doit
We need to
vérifier en
work
tout
as a
cas
team. We need to verify
comment
how.
d'amener la protection de la jeunesse dans une
Before
famille.
we bring in
Et
Child
puis,
Protection Services, how can we support the
si
families in
jamais il y a
other
des
ways?
enjeux au niveau
You know,
de
if it
ce qui se fait pas, parce qu'on le sait
to figure out what's done and what's not done, because in a lot of cultures, parenting differs.
Ce qu'on voulait surtout, c'est ne pas
And
invalider
we
la
wanted
façon
to
de
make
faire,
sure we didn't
mais de voir
invalidate the
comment
way the
on peut
families
s'assurer du bien-être
were
de
doing their
l'enfant
things,
dans
but
l'environnement.
ensure the well-being of the child first and foremost.
Merci beaucoup pour votre
Thank you for your
Je
answer.
pense que ça répond. On a une autre question.
So we have
Puis je
another
pense que ça va
question,
être la
and then that
dernière.
will be the last one.
Alors, une personne qui a participé dit, je trouve votre projet
Someone
Art et
said,
Contes en famille
I find
particulièrement
that your
inspirant,
art and storytelling
notamment dans sa
project is
capacité
inspiring when
à
it
renforcer
comes
les liens
to
familiaux
being able to
par la
reinforce
créativité
family
et la musique.
ties with creativity
Étant
and
moi-même
narration.
impliqué dans le soutien psychosocial
I am
dans un
myself
contexte
involved in a
post-conflit
psychosocial
à l'est de la République du
context
Congo. Je me
at the
demande
east
quel
of the
type de ressources
Republic of Congo. I
matérielles,
was wondering what kind of
humaines et
resources and
financières
material,
ont été
whether human and
essentielles à la
financial,
réussite
were
de votre projet.
necessary for
Et si
your
vous avez des
project success.
recommandations sur la
And would you
manière
have
dont ces ressources
recommendations
pourraient être
for the
adaptées
way
à un
to
environnement où les
adapt
besoins
these
psychosociaux sont
resources
importants, mais
in an
limités par
environment
l'espace
where
limité?
psychosocial is important, but there's limited resources?
Oui, nous,
Nous, dans notre cas, on a des
Well, in our
subventions
case,
par rapport
we
aux
have
projets qu'on
grants
fait.
for our project.
Si on a peu de moyens pour
If we don't
vraiment,
we don't have a lot of other means.
on peut s'adapter à peu de
We
moyens aussi.
can
Parce que les histoires,
adapt
on
to
peut les
having
faire avec
lesser
des
means
tissus.
because the storytelling, we can do it with material like tissue.
La partie en art, on peut
And
s'adapter avec n'importe
for
quoi
the arts, we can adapt with whatever materials are at our disposal.
Vraiment, je pense, moi
I
aussi, j'ai
think,
vécu dans un pays,
I also
c'est
come from a
pas évident
country where when I performed arts therapy, I worked in places where there were no resources, and I had to adapt. I often talked about that with Lawrence, and we would adapt with the materials we would find.
Donc, il y a moyen de l'adapter, je pense. Nous, on a eu
So
la
there's a way
chance dans
to
notre
adapt
projet
it,
Famille,
I
parce
think.
qu'on
Well, we were lucky within this
on a eu
project
la chance de pouvoir engager plus d'intervenantes.
because we were able to hire
par les
more
enseignantes,
facilitators that were coming from the sector, whether it's arts therapy, music therapy, etc. So that was a unique opportunity for us because we were able to develop new tools that are accessible for everyone and that really help us facilitate just by being there. Yes, because, sometimes it was movement with a little bit of music or no music at all. We were able to do quite a bit. So we also have to be quite creative when it comes to resources. So it's not that, we're bringing something to families. There's really a give and take. We're creating tools while we're working with families, and it's basically like a cycle, like a wheel, and we're all part of the same thing.
Parfait. On va
Okay,
prendre une
great.
dernière question.
Last question.
Excellent. La diversité des genres et des
So
sexualités
when
a-t-elle
it
été
comes
abordée?
to where diversity in gender and
Est-ce que les
sexuality
participants ont
topics
pu partager ou développer des
addressed, and did
idées ou nouvelles
participants
compréhensions
share or
sur
develop
les
new
familles
insights or
pendant cette
understandings for
diversité des
families
genres
when
et
it
des
comes to
des
gender and
sexualités?
sexuality diversity?
C'est une bonne question.
Great question. We did have group discussions, team discussions, because, we are creating storytelling. I wouldn't say that families necessarily questioned it, but we did it indirectly through storytelling because, for example, we would choose people in stories that were less gendered, but really it was through arts and narration that we were able to allow a free expression of gender identity. So it's really in that way, it's through arts that we were able to do it, but not directly, I would say. So through the arts, we were able to, for example, give a small child, a small boy, the opportunity to express himself through clothing, the colors that he likes. He likes flamboyant colors. There could be all sorts of forms of expression through gender, but it's through art and storytelling. Sometimes our character had a non-gendered name, indefinite, just so we could give the space to families to feel that they could identify with what we were creating. But we didn't have any direct confrontations for these questions because we're not there to judge their beliefs or their perspectives when it comes to gender. We know that in some cultures it's taboo. We can't really talk about those topics. So it was more relevant for us to address these topics in our space, through arts, without saying it. Giving them this freedom to express themselves. Because the space was non-judgmental, so we weren't there to tell them what was the proper way to do things or see things when it comes to gender. Excellent. Thank you so much for this detailed answer. And thanks again for taking the time to come and present art and storytelling and always focusing on strengths and the positives. I think that really makes the difference. And it really makes this project inspiring. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you to our two presenters, Fernanda and Laurence, as well as our interpreter Sylvie, for joining us today. And thank you to all the webinar participants. See you soon.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Merci
Merci à
Sylvie.
vous.
See you soon. Thank
Au
you.
revoir.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.